Well, I think we're good to get started here. Welcome again, everybody. My name is Phil Harrinarine, and I'm the Associate Director of Admissions at Villanova Law. Welcome again, and thank you so much for taking some time out of your day to join us for this program on our clinical programs. I'm really lucky to be joined by 4 great students and also our Director of Clinical Programs and a professor at the law school. I'm going to let each of them introduce themselves, so I'll just turn it over right now to Professor Barry, and then in order for the students, if you all want to introduce yourselves afterwards, Austin, Annalise, Chris, and then Becky.
Great. Thank you so much, Phil. Thank you for organizing this wonderful webinar, and thank you so much to the students for taking time out of your very busy schedules to talk about clinics, which is obviously my favorite topic. My name is Caitlin Barry, and I am the director of the clinical program here at Villanova, and I also teach the Farmworker Clinic, and I also co-teach our course on race in the law and our course on pretrial adjudication here at the law school. Before I came to Villanova, my practice background was in deportation defense, primarily for people who are also involved in the criminal system. So I was working at the intersection of the criminal and immigration systems for several years in a public interest capacity. I'll turn it over.
Hi, everyone. I'm Austin Davis. I'm a 3L. I went to Dickinson College undergrad, where I studied political science and had a minor in religion. Following college, I worked at a boutique law firm near DC that focused solely on veterans benefits, so kind of a health law aspect. And then I started Villanova Law School, kind of stayed in the health law field to an extent, which is, and then I joined the health law clinic. And other than that, I'm looking forward to graduation.
Hi, everyone. My name is Annalise. I'm a 3L, and I'm from Portland, Oregon. I went to Gonzaga University for undergrad, studying criminal justice and political science. I took a year off in between and did some traveling, then came to Villanova, and I am really interested in just criminal justice reform generally and public interest. So after law school, I'll be clerking in federal court in Oregon, and then I will be hopefully joining the ranks of public defenders, and then maybe getting into civil rights litigation later on in my career.
Hey everyone, welcome to the panel. My name is Christopher Mdeway. I'm a 3L here at Villanova Law. I was in the Clinic for Asylum, Refugees, and Immigrant Services throughout my 2L, both in basic and advanced. I currently work for a mass tort litigation firm in Philadelphia. In between American University, where I went to undergrad, and Villanova, I was involved with the United Nations, and predominantly human rights.
Hi, I'm Becky Velez. I was in the FLAC clinic with Professor Barry. I'm from around St. Louis, Missouri, and I went to the College of St. Rose, which is a tiny private school in Albany, New York, where I studied criminal justice behavior in the law with a concentration in law. My interests mainly lie within the criminal justice system as well as immigration law. And that's hopefully where my focus will stay post-graduation.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that, everybody. Well, I want to turn it back over to Professor Barry to get us started with this conversation. Professor Barry, can you chat with our attendees about Villanova's clinical programs, generally speaking? I know that we're going to get into the specifics of each one later on and have each of the students share about their experiences in the clinical programs. But can you just chat with the attendees about what the application process is like? And then you have obviously a bunch of information to share with them, but just to let them know about how clinical programs at Villanova works. And I will just say, for everybody that's in attendance, please feel free to throw any questions that you have into the chat box moving forward. We definitely want you to be able to take advantage of those that are on the panel today. So you can throw your questions into the chat box moving forward. I'll be able to see it, and I'll be able to then have that posed to our panelists moving forward. I will also ask our students, if you feel comfortable doing so, please feel free to put your email address into the chat box as well. That way those that are in attendance can contact you afterwards and ask you questions directly if they have a specific interest in the clinic you were in or what you are interested in pursuing as well.
Thanks, Phil. Yes, and please do ask questions. We want this to be as helpful to all of you as possible. And I applaud all of you for being curious about the clinical program at the schools that you are applying to. It's not something that I understood as being particularly important when I was applying to schools. But once I was in law school, clinic was absolutely my favorite part of law school. And it would have been a great question to ask any school that I was applying to about how robust their clinical program is. So in our program at Villanova, I know that there are other webinars that are going to address things like externships and other experiential opportunities. But just for folks who might be new to understanding what the difference is between a clinic as compared to other types of internships, externships, an in-house clinic, which is what Villanova has. We have 6 in-house clinical programs, which literally means we are in the law school. We have a legal services organization on the first floor of the law school here. And it really allows students to be in a position of taking full responsibility over their cases. So when all of our students here were in the clinic, you're in the clinic office almost every day. You were the one who's handling all of the interviews with your clients, you're counseling clients, you're drafting all of the documents in court. When we go to court, you're sitting at counsel's table. I'm sitting in the back in the gallery, and we have done all the work ahead of time to make sure that you're comfortable being ready to be in that position with your client. As compared to an externship or an internship where you may be working more as an assistant to the attorney who's actually handling the case. You wouldn't really be seeing the case through. You wouldn't be the primary contact for the case. And so having an in-house clinical program really allows us to support students in having that kind of intensive experience during your time in school. We have 1 semester clinics at Villanova with the opportunity to stay on for additional semesters as advanced students, which is done on a case-by-case basis, depending on what our clients' needs are. But for students who really connect with their clients or with the work, there is the opportunity to stay on for additional time. We have an application process for clinics at Villanova that takes place before you register for the rest of your courses. So you'll know whether or not you're in a clinic before you pick out the rest of your courses, and you can sort of plan accordingly if you want to carve out as much time as possible to be working on your clinic cases. We register for the following year's classes all at once at Villanova, so you'll register at one time for all of your classes for the following year. So in March of 2022, we'll be doing registration for the fall of 22 and spring of 23 all at once at the clinic. You can only take 1 clinic at Villanova, but if you have completed 1 semester and would like to do an advanced semester in a different clinic, you're welcome to see if another clinic would have capacity to take you on as an advanced student. I have done that in the past with some really great success. There was a student in the health law clinic who really wanted the opportunity to handle an appellate case, a case on appeal. And we had a case that we lost at trial, and we wanted to file an appeal. And so she came in as an advanced student and handled the appeal, which was ultimately successful before the Third Circuit, which was a really exciting development and a nice opportunity for the student as well. It's a fairly competitive process getting into a clinic, but we have been able to accommodate everyone who has wanted to take a clinic by the time they graduate. So for students who apply in their 2L year, there are not a lot of slots for 2L students, at least with the way enrollment has gone in the last few years. Becky was an exception, who got to do a clinic, I think in the fall semester, right, of your second year. The majority of the students who take clinic are in their 3rd year, but we do have 2nd year students who take it as well. So by the time everyone graduates, we've been able to find a place for everyone in the clinic program. You are required to take 6 experiential credits at Villanova. Villanova does really recognize that experiential education is essential to preparing you to practice law. It's recommended but not required by the American Bar Association. So having it required here is recognizing how important it is to your education. The clinic programs are all at least 6 credits, and the CARES clinic, the asylum clinic that Christopher was in, is 8 credits. So any clinic would satisfy all of your experiential credits that you're required to take. You are welcome to take as many as, I believe it's 17 experiential credits. So if you wanted to do an additional advanced semester and another externship, you would have plenty of room for that in your schedule. We've also had students who got permission to go beyond even that experiential number. So we have a lot of different opportunities for you to do that during your time here. The general time requirements, I think all of you might laugh when I say we require you to do about 200 hours in the clinic, which is about 15 hours a week. The exception, again, is the asylum clinic, which has it has more credits allocated, and so there is a higher time requirement. But students do say that it frequently ends up being more time, or at least feeling like more time. It's a significant investment, right? For most of our students, this is the first time they are interviewing a client on their own. It's the first time that they are researching the law and counseling a client on their own. And it is an enormous amount of responsibility. It's also a wonderful privilege that we have to get to accompany our clients on the journey that they're on. And for students to get to do that, to have that full responsibility themselves during law school is a really wonderful and unique opportunity. So it is a significant time investment, but hopefully with a high payoff. So I think, should we move on and talk about each individual clinic, Phil?
Feel free to do so. Thank you.
Okay, great. So maybe we can start out and talk about the Civil Justice Clinic, which is one of the first clinics that was started here at Villanova over 20 years ago. It's a general practice clinic. It's currently directed by Professor Dia Halder, who has an extensive background working in civil legal aid, primarily with a focus on working with survivors of domestic violence, who is the target population for the Civil Justice Clinic. Within that, they offer a range of different services and try to be very responsive to the needs of the community that they serve. They handle landlord-tenant cases, protection from abuse orders, child custody. They'll occasionally handle some employment cases or any other need that is unmet in that community. So Annalise, I don't know if you wanted to talk about your experience in CJC and a little bit more about what the clinic does.
Yeah, so I had 2 property cases actually, so I didn't do any family law. My first one was a landlord-tenant case. I was the only student on that case, so took it from beginning to end, interviewed the client. My client was the tenant being sort of kicked out of his apartment, so we filed a counterclaim, alleging that the landlord, didn't provide a habitable space for this tenant to live in. And so we eventually had a hearing. There was a lot of strategy involved, prepping for that hearing, cross-examination, gathering evidence and documents. Unfortunately, my client didn't actually show up to the hearing, which is a reality of this type of work. So that was a learning experience as well. And then I also had a partner case, and that was a more complex, quiet title case. Basically what happened in that case was our client had his family home sort of taken away from him through a person who fraudulently conveyed the deed to his home. So we were, my partner and I joined in on this case that the Civil Justice Clinic had been litigating for about 2 years. And thankfully, my semester, we were able to get judgment in our favor and get the deed signed back over to our client's family name. So that was an exciting win. So yeah, it was pretty interesting. A totally different area of law. Like I'm really into criminal law, but I thought I'd give civil a try. And it was just really interesting to dive into a totally different area of the law that I may or may not come back to, but it was a really great experience.
That's wonderful, Annalise. And I do know that you have an interest in going into criminal law and civil rights. I think clinic can be a great opportunity for students to try things out. I've had students who took the clinic and said, I loved my clients and I loved learning how to go to court. Immigration is not the practice area for me, but it's also wonderful to know that, right? Because what we're hoping to do is set you up to be in the right place when you graduate. And I've also had students who took the clinic the last semester of their 3rd year. They had never worked on an immigration-related case before and came out of it saying, this is all I want to do now. So it's great to be open to new things and try that out. And it's great to hear that you had a nice success in that case as well. So every clinic, including the Civil Justice Clinic, also has a seminar component, I should mention. So there is a class that meets twice a week. It's very skills focused. And so there will be a lot less lecturing on the law than you might have in your other big doctrinal classes. We're very focused on teaching you how to interview, how to counsel, how to create a case theory. In our entrepreneurship clinic, they're focused on learning how to draft contracts, learning how to manage projects for clients, advise on business plans, and then we'll do a lot of simulations in our class time as well. And so if there's anything any of you would like to share about readings or simulations that you found particularly helpful, please feel free to chime in. We can talk next about the CARES Clinic, our asylum clinic, which is, again, our clinic that has the most credits assigned to it because the work involved is so intensive. Phil, it's also the clinic that you were in while you were here in law school, which stands out in all of our memories as you were such a star student. That clinic handles they do immigrants' rights work with a focus on asylees and refugees. So direct services for primarily people who are fleeing persecution in their home countries. The asylum laws restrict who is defined as a refugee as someone who is fleeing on the basis of persecution due to their race, religion, national origin, membership in a particular social group or political opinion. And students in that clinic have had the opportunity to litigate cases through the hearing. As you might imagine, the last few years have seen an enormous amount of chaos in the immigration system as a whole, but in particular in the asylum system. And I've been incredibly inspired by students who have remained dedicated to their clients throughout constant changes in the law and attacks on people's ability to defend their right to stay here. So Chris, I don't know if you wanted to talk a little bit about your work in the CARES Clinic.
Sure, absolutely. So for context, I was drawn to CARES for a number of reasons. First, I am a first-gen American. My parents are from Syria. And so a number of my family members are either refugees or asylees across the world, and seeing firsthand how difficult the process can be for people that are in possibly or more than likely the worst case scenarios, where time is of the essence and there's constant conflict, not just in Syria or the Middle East, but across the globe. I had a total of 6 clients by the time I finished CARES. My first semester, I had clients from El Salvador. And my second semester, I had the same clients that had carried over, as well as one from Syria and several from Burkina Faso, all with totally different contexts as to why they were applying for asylum and how they would win their cases and their applications. And so that obviously changed day by day in terms of the legal aspect. The rules would change under different administrations. And so being a member of the clinic meant being on top of not only your workload, but current events and seeing what do I need to do for the day and how does that affect tomorrow. Obviously, the staff is there for you through and through, but the legwork is yours to do. And so Villanova is particularly incredible in the sense that your hands are the ones doing the work. And so, yes, it's quite heavy, but at the same time, this is as impactful as a law student, I think, as you can possibly be. And you walk away every night thinking, okay, I've done better for the world. Overall, an incredible experience.
Thank you for that, Chris. And I should have mentioned that the CARES Clinic is directed by Professor Abel Rodriguez. Professor Rodriguez has an extensive background in immigration litigation. He's also a scholar who studies sanctuary and works with community organizations to support different campaigns to address immigrants' rights issues. Chris, I don't know if you worked on any of the community projects while you were in CARES.
Yeah, sorry about that. I also served we held a panel, and we have an annual panel out of CARES. And attorneys, once you become barred, you have to obtain continuing learning education credits, CLE credits, to stay a member of the bar in the state you're barred in. And so we hosted about 150 attorneys over a 3-day course, all with different panels of really a skills-based course of how can they help clients with asylum applications, work permits, whatever the topic was for that day. Trying to think of, I believe we only had it in the fall. Only in the fall. I don't think we had it in the spring as well.
Yeah, which was part of a symposium that CARES will host every year on different topics. And the inaugural symposium was divided between sessions for practitioners that you mentioned, very practical tips on representing folks in removal proceedings. And then there were also some broader workshops that were open to the community, sort of discussing the different issues that were happening in the immigration system from a range of different perspectives. I know that CARES has also done some sort of more fun community projects with organizations, creating TikTok videos for young people to know your rights on interactions with the government, some research for a campaign for sanctuary schools. So trying to figure out how the Philadelphia School District was sharing information with ICE and what was in the power of the school district to do to stop it, which they did that campaign with a community organization called Juntos, who were actually successful in getting a resolution from the school district that they would not share any information with ICE or allow ICE into school buildings, which was an exciting development. Phil, was there anything else you wanted to share about your experience in CARES?
I think similar to Chris, I mean, my family's background is similar. I wasn't born in the United States, and so for me, it was pretty personal. The reasons behind why I wanted to be in the CARES clinic, and the professor that was in charge of the clinic at that time is still pretty involved with the law school. Her name is Professor Michelle Pistone, and has done a lot of work around trying to assist individuals who aren't lawyers or who aren't barred attorneys, and trying to identify ways in which they can assist individuals that are seeking immigration relief and assistance as well, which is just nice to know that there's obviously so many cases that need help, that need attention, and that there are people out there that can help, even if they aren't those that are going to law school and those that are barred, right, through a certain jurisdiction or state. But my experience there was similar to Chris's. I worked with my partner who graduated and went through the Justice Honors Program to clerk for a new Orleans immigration judge, which was really wonderful. But my partner and I worked on a case for a family through Central America who were seeking asylum in the United States, and whose father had been murdered by a gang in Central America, and whose young son under the age of 10 had been recruited to be a part of the gang. So just really life-changing stories, things that are really hard to compute or to really understand, but to know that these individuals are coming to this country, a country where they can see opportunities presented to themselves. It's really life-changing to be able to represent them, to work with them, to speak with them. We have a translator program that the university undergraduate students assist us with. So it's really neat that the college students at Villanova can come across campus. They're at the law school. They help with the translating if you don't know the language that your client speaks. And it's really great to be able to work with them to then be able to throw together a case strategy for the reasoning behind why, right, they deserve to have asylum in this country and to be able to stay here. And as Professor Berry mentioned, my case went before an immigration judge. I wasn't in the clinic when it did, but my partner took it to court and represented the family, and Professor Pistone sat in the galley, right, in sort of in the rows with everybody else. And my partner, my good friend, she was able to get asylum for the family that we represented. So a lot of success stories in the CARES clinic and with other clinics, as Annalise mentioned beforehand as well. But really life-changing work. And I will just say that, as Professor Berry mentioned, if you don't think that you're interested in immigration work, or if you're not interested in health law or whatever the case might be, the skill sets you acquire through the clinics are truly transferable to different areas of law. So don't just think about the area of law and say that's not for me, because working with a client is truly life-changing, and you're going to be able to use those skill sets in whatever sort of field you're trying to pursue in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just thinking, Annalise, about the hearing that you prepared for, even though it didn't go forward, the experience of, writing out your testimony that you want to have your client provide, having all of your exhibits organized, getting everything submitted to the court. These are all transferable skills for any litigator. And there's plenty of skills that transfer across practice areas, even if it's something that you don't want to litigate when it comes to interviewing and counseling. I actually just got a lovely email from an alum this week who went into gaming law. So nothing related to what we do in the Farmworker Clinic, but he had a wonderful experience in the clinic. He also learned that it was possible to work on an immigration case while he was doing many other things. And that inspired him to start a pro bono project at his firm where he is now, where they're working with Afghan refugees. And so there's also an important component of being in the clinic of understanding how to handle multiple responsibilities, and an understanding that some of these cases are very doable as pro bono work, even if your primary focus is not going to be the substantive area that we're practicing in the clinic. We could talk next about the Clinic for Law and Entrepreneurship, which is directed by Professor Komal Vaidya. It is our only transactional clinic, meaning that they don't litigate, so they don't go to court in that clinic. They represent small businesses, nonprofits, community organizations who have a social justice mission. And so thinking about organizations, businesses that may be started in communities that are facing gentrification, where people from that neighborhood are trying to start businesses to be able to ensure that they can stay in that neighborhood. Businesses that may have, that may be owned by people of color, owned from people who are part of the community that they're trying to serve. They also represent nonprofits who are trying to formalize their status and have all of their documents approved by the state and the federal government. They've also done some work in real estate and zoning, a really wide range of different types of entrepreneurs that they work with, and some really interesting work. I'm thinking of some of the other clients that they've had in that clinic included an organization that was trying to protect community gardens, primarily in Black communities in Philadelphia that are facing erasure due to development as the real estate prices are going up. So done a lot of really interesting work in that clinic, and they are part of the Scarpa Center here at the law school and part of our broader entrepreneurship program. So we don't have any students from the entrepreneurship clinic here tonight, but we'd be happy to connect you with students if anyone is interested. Feel free to reach out to me or to Phil. And so again, if folks have any questions as we move through, we want to make sure this is as useful to you as possible. So feel free to drop any questions in the chat. We can talk next about the Farmworker Clinic, the clinic that I teach. The Farmworker Clinic is similar to civil justice in that it is a general practice clinic. We will try to handle whatever legal matter our clients come to us with. Our clients are all farm workers and their family members. As long as it's within our range of competency, meaning it's something that me and 8 students can do ethically, we'll try to figure out how to do it. The overwhelming demand from our clients is for representation in deportation defense. So most of our cases are immigration cases. Different than the asylum clinic, our cases cover a really wide range of immigration practice. So we handle, we have litigated cases where we are alleging racial profiling on behalf of either local police or federal ICE agents. And we may be making constitutional claims about violations of our clients' rights that would prevent the government from carrying out the deportation. We also represent victims and survivors of serious crimes who may be eligible to receive visas because of the investigation of the crime and their participation in it. We've represented victims of trafficking in the labor context. And we also represent quite a number of young people who came to the United States by themselves, who are now either working in farm labor or are the children of farm workers. And in those cases, we are frequently going to family court to try to establish custody as we're working on the immigration case, which is one of the types of matters that Becky worked on in the Farmworker Clinic. So Becky, did you want to talk about your work in clinic?
Yeah, so as Professor Berry said, I had a client who was a minor. So we were attempting to get a visa called Special Immigrant Juvenile Status, which is for people under the age of 18 who have been abandoned by their parents. There's a special visa for that. And in order to apply for that, there needs to be custody changes and custody agreements. And it's a lot of paperwork, and it's a very traumatizing experience too, because you have to prove that this child was abandoned by their parents. So we handled that case. We actually didn't get to go to trial on it because he was a new client for us. But we got all the way up until deciding whether or not he wanted to move forward with his case. I actually don't know what happened with his case, but so that's mainly what I handled. But I also got to work on 2 separate community projects. One was Driving PA Forward, which is focusing on getting driver's licenses for immigrants without status, because without licenses, they can't drive to work, or they're in fear of driving to work and just trying to make a living. And attached to that, I worked with my partner in a fellowship, which is called Take Back Tech. And we focused on right to know laws and what PennDOT does with your driver's license information, because it's kind of terrifying once you get into the weeds a bit. Yeah, I worked on a lot. Mainly we worked on immigration cases. I don't think we had anything outside of immigration while I was in the clinic, but I had the ability to work on cases as a 2L, so as a second year, that most people don't get to work on, because for some of the other clinics, you need to be a 3L or you need to be a second semester 2L. But for the FLAC clinic, I was able to do real lawyer work, which is what you hope to do in law school as a first semester 2L. So.
Thanks, Becky. And we were successful in getting that custody order. The visa application is pending, so I'll keep you posted. But right, so similar to CARES and some of the other programs, in addition to our direct representation, we also do some projects with community partners. And so the Driving Pennsylvania Forward coalition is an example of the type of project that we take on. So while it's not an explicit farm worker project, driver's license access is a huge issue for our farm worker clients who tend to live in geographically isolated areas where there's no public transportation. There's also a lot of well-documented racial profiling that happens on highways in Pennsylvania, which makes our clients very vulnerable to contact with law enforcement. And so driver's licenses are a big human rights issue for our clients in Pennsylvania. And so we were able to provide some legal research for the coalition as they were advocating to change the driver's license laws in Pennsylvania. Becky, you and your partner did an amazing presentation for the fellowship program that we were a part of, which was a network of attorneys and advocates around the country who were interested in investigating how the immigration system uses data from other sources, government sources and private sources, to investigate and target people. And so we were able to do some research, which I agree, Becky, was a little terrifying, into how the Pennsylvania license system provides information to ICE, which they do actively. And so you and your partner were able to do a presentation on some of the research that you did into that. So all of the students in the Farmworker Clinic are able to have their own individual clients, and then some students will also work on community projects like that, depending on what the needs are of our partners. So we could, I did see that there is a question here. I want to take a look at this. Is there any way to do 2 clinics in different semesters at Villanova, the Entrepreneurship Clinic, and then one of these litigation clinics? So you cannot do 2 semesters of what we call the basic clinic, but after you have completed a semester in one clinic, you could ask if the director of another clinic has capacity to take you on as an advanced student. So at that point, you most likely wouldn't be attending the same seminar class, with the understanding that you would already have some more advanced skills that could be transferable to a different clinic. So there may be an opportunity to work on, to do work in another clinic. I will say I love it when students, before they take clinic, approach me and say, you know, I'm really interested in doing immigration work. I'm also interested in entrepreneurship. Is there anything I could do that would sort of cross both paths? And we can probably come up with a project that may involve both types of work, and that may even be a collaboration between the clinics. The Civil Justice Clinic also handles some of the similar custody work that we do in the Farmworker Clinic. We've taken clients from the Civil Justice Clinic into the Farmworker Clinic, the same thing with tax and health, and obviously there's a lot of overlap in the needs that people have. So while you couldn't take 2 semesters of basic clinic, if you wanted to work with us ahead of time to let us know what your interests are and how we may be able to meet them in the projects that we take on, we'd be happy to do that. I'm thinking about a collaboration that we did with the Entrepreneurship Clinic years ago, where a farm worker organization wanted to start a credit union. And so we were doing research into microfinance, which was something that was completely new to me. So we worked with the Entrepreneurship Clinic and thought about, we did a lot of the legal research on what the requirements would be to establish a credit union, and they did more of the business plan, which was a great project for us to work on jointly. Can move on and talk about our tax clinic. We have a federal tax clinic here that provides services to low-income taxpayers. It's directed by Professor Christine Spidell, who is a national expert in low-income taxpayer rights. Professor Spidell would want me to explain that the benefit system in the United States has moved away from giving direct cash benefits, which used to be what we did in the welfare system, towards a system where most benefits are provided through tax returns. And so things like the earned income credit and the child tax credit are some of the biggest benefits that low-income taxpayers can now receive. So the work that they do in the tax clinic is crucial to ensuring that people have the kind of safety net that they need to be able to get by. And so their clinic is more of a high volume clinic. It's more common in that clinic that you may have 5 or 6 clients at a time. as the time that it takes to resolve each matter is less. But it is an active litigation clinic where they will be appearing before the tax court at least once, usually more than once in a semester, negotiating with the IRS and trying to assist as many people as possible in resolving their tax issues. They also are very active in educating the community about rights and benefits in the tax system. We've done some fun collaborations in the past at community organizations doing Know Your Rights presentations on both taxes and immigration issues. We've also done some outreach trips together where we might go out to a rural area where there aren't any other legal service providers and spend the day or a couple days doing intake and trying to assist as many people as we can with any small matters in the tax or immigration systems. All right, so we can move on to the health law clinic. So our health law clinic, which is taught by Professor Mike Campbell. Professor Campbell brought 25 years of experience as the founder of the Health Law Project in Pennsylvania. He is one of the utmost experts on Pennsylvania health law. And the clinic that he teaches here handles, again, a range of different matters, but generally cases that will involve someone's medical records or access to the healthcare system. So cases involving the rights of people who are disabled to access the kind of care that they need, people who need emergency care who may not be covered by insurance, or if the insurance is resisting providing the care that is actually going to be required in a particular situation, people who need to access ongoing benefits. Those are the types of cases they would do in health. So Austin, did you want to talk about your experience in health?
Sure, thank you. Everybody's talked about how important pro bono work is so far, so I want to preface my portion with a quick statistic. So in a paper I wrote, I found information that there was one legal representative for every 6,415 individuals currently living in poverty. That's how underserved those in lower income brackets are in this country. And I know Chris talked about continuing legal education, and one of our deans actually still does pro bono work on the side. So what I wanted to say to start off was how you can do this, even if you have a well-paying job. You can offer your time to, say, a couple cases at a time to make sure that that statistic becomes lower. So the kind of cases I worked on, which are very important in terms, because health affects everybody in this country. I worked on something called personal assistance service hour cases, which are for disabled individuals who need direct care in their home so they can stay in their home instead of having to be put into a facility. And you have to fight the insurance companies to make sure that these individuals have the requisite number of hours they need from a care agency each single week. I also worked on Social Security cases, and that case was a bit different for me because it was at the appellate level when I inherited the case. And so I got to write a brief that went before the Eastern District of PA, which was really interesting. I mean, my previous job, all I did was briefs, so that wasn't too different, but going before a federal court was different. So I think what really drew me to the clinic was because I had so much transactional experience coming into law school, I didn't have the litigation experience. And that's something that you really need if you're going to go into litigation, or it's just actually just practical skills in general. And so with the personal assistance service hour cases, I really learned to go outside my comfort zone. Not necessarily because I was uncomfortable with public speaking, which I enjoy. It's a different type of public speaking because you're directly advocating for somebody else. And what you do in those hearings is going to have a direct outcome on that. And so that's something you need to think about when you're joining a clinic, except for I forget which clinic it was that was strictly transactional. So you're going to learn the skills that are going to be directly marketable to you and useful to you the minute you leave law school. But at the same time, the best part of it is you get to make a difference in someone's life. But what I will say is it can be frustrating sometimes working against government agencies, insurance agencies is difficult. And what I would say is take the frustration and turn it into something useful. Is there anything you think I should add, Professor Berry?
Well, that was really helpful, Austin. And I appreciate you bringing up the frustration. I mean, there's lots of things that are frustrating about doing this type of work. There's lots of things that are frustrating about lawyering in general. I had a student in class this week who said, is it okay if I just spend some time venting? And I said, of course. And it's actually really healthy to vent, because then it helps other students understand that they're not the only ones who are struggling, or not the only ones who are feeling overwhelmed. I know this was a challenge for us when we were remote, and I'm glad to be back in person. But part of what we're trying to do is also support you in just developing good work-life balance and healthy habits for processing through some of the frustrations that are just going to be part of this work. So I appreciate you adding in that is a part of lawyering, and it's definitely a part of the work that we do in clinic. It's definitely a part of litigating against the government. And I'm sure that in the entrepreneurship clinic, where a lot of times they're dealing with licensing, and dealing with trying to get organizational structures approved by the IRS, they're also dealing with lots of frustrations on the bureaucratic end as well. So it's just something that's inherent to this practice. But again, it's a reason why we have to build good support structures. Also, I was wondering if you just wanted to say something. I know that you were doing telephone hearings in the health law clinic, I think, which were used much more, which are used generally to accommodate people who may be calling in from home, but I think were used more extensively during the pandemic, and with the move to doing more phone and video hearings, which the immigration system is just now figuring out how to do. If you wanted to talk a little bit about what your experience was handling hearings like that remotely.
Well, to add to the frustration, that was not easy, especially because there's often a disproportionate, or, well, I guess asymmetric technology gap between what you have as an individual at the law school and often your clients. So that was a bit of a challenge, just dialing into the interview, getting my one of my clients dialed in was a challenge. The other problem is you couldn't see the body language of the judge. You couldn't see the body language of the opposing counsel. And what was really frustrating was not being in the room. We had this attorney who was obviously assigned from the insurance company. They farmed the case out from their internal counsel to a firm. And clearly the guy didn't even pick up the file or pay attention to what was going on. And they weren't communicating with me, so I didn't have their exhibits ahead of time. And he had the audacity to say to the judge that there was no history of me serving as this client's counsel, when I had been to that judge 2 months before. And she knew who I was. So we spent like an hour arguing against this person just to get to the hearing aspect of the case. And what was really difficult was when cross-examining the witness from the other side. Again, the body language was a challenge, but then at the same time, I couldn't. It was harder to anticipate what they were going to say. It was harder to select which questions were going to be necessary and which weren't, because of that, remote aspect. Because it wasn't on Zoom. I mean, if it was on Zoom, it would have been easier. I don't know how that case turned out, so I'll have to talk to Professor Campbell afterwards and figure it out.
Yeah, thanks, Austin. I appreciate that. And there definitely are challenges, but I think this is the direction that a lot of lawyering is headed. So thinking about how we're developing those skills and dealing with the frustrations at the same time. I think we would love to hear from all of you about the other activities that you're involved in the law school, knowing that you're all leaders in the school in different ways. Becky, I don't know if we wanted to start with you.
Sure. So I am a member of our Moot Court board at Villanova Law School. So I do appellate arguments for competition. I'm also a member of Phi Alpha Delta, which is our law fraternity. I was president last year, but took a step back this year because I have a higher workload. And I'm also in a bunch of other clubs, Villanova Law Students Against Sexual Violence, the Latin American Law Student Association. But on top of the groups and extracurricular involvements I have on campus. I have taken a very, very firm belief that whatever you do on campus, you should do something to take care of yourself off campus. So my friends and I, even through quarantining COVID, have made sure to do online trivia nights and things of that nature to stay connected and stay sane through law school, which can be difficult.
I really appreciate that. And I love the 1-for-1. If you're going to do an activity at school, you also have to do something for yourself. Do you want to say a little bit more about Moot Court, just for folks who may not know what that is?
Yeah, so Moot Court board is so a lot of colleges have like a mock trial team. We're kind of the step after that. So it's not the trial level, it's the appellate argument. So you get a record, which is sometimes 40, 50 pages long, and you have to figure out what you're arguing, write a big brief on it, which also ends up being 45, 50 pages long. And then about a month after you submit that, you go before a panel of judges and you argue, and they get to interrupt you and ask you a bunch of questions. We actually have an internal competition for 2Ls in the fall, which is we're planning and working on right now, where everybody who is involved in the legal writing too for the litigation track gets to participate in their own Moot Court competition. And it's all internal. All the 2Ls who want to participate can participate. And that's actually how I made it onto Moot Court Board, was by doing that competition. So if you guys have any questions about Moot Court Board, and if I can't answer them, I'm good friends with our chair. So please do have my email. Feel free to email me about anything.
Thanks, Becky. Annalise, you want to talk about anything else you've been involved in at the law school?
Sure. I am the site chair for Face to Face, which is a birth certificate clinic, and this is part of Pro Bono Society. So I think probably every law school has some sort of pro bono organization for students, and it just gives you an opportunity to do some work in the community that is outside of your schoolwork. And if you're interested in public interest generally, it's just a great way to sort of stay rooted in sort of the work that you want to do outside of law school. So the face-to-face birth certificate clinic is what it sounds like. We help coordinate and fill out applications for indigent clients to get birth certificates, which is a necessary form of ID in Pennsylvania to be able to get any other form of ID, which would lead to employment and housing and et cetera. I've been a recipient of the Walter A. Lucas Public Interest Fellowship Program here, and I'm on the board for that. I'm the Alumni and Development Coordinator. And so often summer work, especially for 1Ls, but anything in the public interest sector typically is unpaid, and that can be, a financial hardship on law students. Not making money can be very stressful. So there is an organization here at Villanova where we sort of all year long do different activities, and we raise money. We have like a giant auction at the end of the year, and we basically raise money from the community to sponsor like a $5,000 fellowship that is like a stipend for us. So I worked at a public defender's office last summer and was able to get one of those fellowships that helped me pay the bills. So I'm very involved in that organization as well.
That's great. Thanks, Annalise. How about you, Chris?
So here at Villanova Law, we have a number of affinity groups for identities, ethnicities, and whatever else you might identify as. So I'm the president of the Middle Eastern Law Student Association. I'm also a site chair for the Pro Bono Society. We have a chapter called Wills for Heroes, where we provide wills for EMS, firefighters, veterans, police, whoever it might be that weekend. Overall, we have a number of programs here at Villanova where you can find your niche. I also, in terms of outdoor activities, I was on the soccer team that we have as a club team at the Villanova Law School. We play the other grad schools, so Drexel, Temple, Penn Law, med schools, PCOM. That was my outdoor activity for 1L.
Sounds like a great way to get through 1L year. Yeah. How about you, Austin?
I actually don't do that many activities. I did so many in college, I figured I'd focus on academics, but I'm on honor board. So we oversee conduct, examinations, evaluations, things like that. Something I forgot to mention earlier that I would recommend if that's okay for if you want to pursue a clinic would be to take a trial advocacy course. It's not required, but it will set you up with the fundamental skills to litigate.
Thanks for that, Austin. And yeah, I know when I was in law school, I did a lot of activities my second year. And then by my third year, all I wanted to do was work. So I did clinic, and I had a million volunteer projects and was not as involved in the student organizations, but it's wonderful to know that they're there if you want to participate, and such a great way to find community and find other folks who want to have similar careers. I actually, one of the people I met through being in a student organization when I was in law school is still one of my best friends who works at an organization at the border, and I'm actually headed there in a few months to volunteer with her. Were you going to say something, Phil?
Yeah, I was just going to throw out there that if anybody else in attendance has any last questions, definitely feel free to throw them in. We're getting close to wrapping up the event soon, so I just wanted to give you all the opportunity to share any questions that you have for any of our panelists. Just know moving forward, you do have their contact information, so you can reach out to them directly and or reach out to me so that I can put you in touch with them or any other individuals at the law school as well moving forward. But I want to give you the last word, Professor Berry, just to share with us what you would say makes Villanova Law's clinical programs unique and distinct. For those that are listening, for those that are considering law schools or thinking about Villanova, why it sort of stands out.
Sure, and I'm definitely going to toot our horn, but also just some thoughts on for folks who are applying to law school, some of the questions you might want to be asking about clinical programs if this is something that's important to you. There's no definition that the American Bar Association gives for a clinic. Or I will say the definition they give is very broad. And so schools can call something a clinic and it can mean very different things to different institutions. So there are some schools where they have a clinic, but it's actually simulated. So you may have actors or other students who are playing clients, and that is the work that you're doing in the clinic. There are also some schools that will call a clinic something that we would call an externship, where you would go to a host site and you'd be working with attorneys who tend to be very busy, tend to have a million things going on. It's a very valuable experience to do an externship. And my suggestion for students is always to do clinic and an externship. There's invaluable networking opportunities, getting to see what different law firm, the institutional culture is like, finding mentors, building relationships. But if you really want that experience of being able to have an intensive apprenticeship while you're in law school, handling your own cases with a faculty member who's going to be devoted to running that clinic, it's a good question to ask is, are the clinics actually in-house? Are the faculty who are teaching the clinic full-time faculty? Are the adjuncts who are just going to come in for a few hours a week and won't actually be as available to students as they may be somewhere else? So it's maybe some of the things that you want to be thinking about. If we had more time, I'd love to hear from all of you about what your other externships have been, but I'm guessing that's going to be the subject of a different webinar. So please don't hesitate to reach out if you have any other questions about the clinic program. I'm always happy to have coffee chat with folks if you have questions, although I think you will always get the best information from students. So I just want to thank all of you for making the time to be here and for sharing your contact information. And just applaud all of the incredible work that you're all doing. It really has been such an honor to work with all of you in your time here at law school.
Thank you all so much for joining, and thank you to our panelists, our attendees. Feel free to keep in touch, like I said beforehand, and stay safe, everybody. Best of luck as you're applying to law schools, okay? Take care. Thanks so much, Becky, Austin, Chris, Annalise, Professor Berry.